My heart hammered against my ribs as I lay perfectly still on the cold kitchen floor. The ceramic dinner plate had shattered when I collapsed, sending pieces of Alex's carefully prepared salmon across the tiles. I had to fight every instinct screaming at me to move, to breathe normally, to open my eyes and confront the man I'd loved for 3 years. But I couldn't. Not yet. The dizziness that had plagued me for months was finally starting to make sense, and the truth was more terrifying than any illness I could have imagined. 20 minutes ago, I had pretended to eat Alex's dinner while secretly scraping it into a napkin hidden in my lap. Then I'd waited, counting the minutes until he expected me to feel drowsy and confused like always. Instead, for the first time in weeks, my mind felt crystal clear. When I heard his footsteps approaching the kitchen, I'd quickly scattered the hidden food around my plate and thrown myself to the floor, letting the dish crash dramatically. Now I lay motionless, controlling my breathing to shallow, barely perceptible movements. Mia? Oh God, Mia. Alex's voice carried the perfect note of panic as he rushed to my side. I felt his hands on my shoulders, shaking me gently. Baby, wake up! Come on, wake up! His performance was flawless. If I hadn't been pretending, I would have believed every word. Alex checked my pulse, his fingers pressing against my wrist with practiced ease. Then I heard him stand up, his footsteps moving away from me. There was a pause, and then the sound I'd been dreading and hoping for at the same time. His phone dialing. It's me, Alex said, his voice completely different now. Gone was the worried husband. This voice was cold, businesslike. She's out. Took a little longer tonight, but the dose worked perfectly. My blood turned to ice. Every muscle in my body wanted to tense, but I forced myself to remain limp, lifeless. Yeah, I know the presentation is tomorrow, Alex continued, and I could hear him pacing. That's exactly why tonight is perfect. She'll be unconscious for at least 4 hours. I can get everything we need from her laptop. The presentation. My presentation. The campaign I'd been working on for 6 months. The one that could secure the biggest client in our company's history. The project that had consumed my life, that I'd stayed up countless nights perfecting. The files are all on her personal laptop in the home office, Alex said. She's been so paranoid about security lately, she won't even use the company network for the final drafts. Makes our job easier, actually. Our job. There was someone else involved. Someone who had been paying my husband to drug me, to steal my work, to destroy everything I'd built. Listen, I need to know the transfer goes through tonight. Alex's voice grew sharper. I've been doing this for 3 months. 3 months of watching her stumble around like a zombie, of pretending to be concerned while she slowly fell apart. The money better be in my account by morning, or I'm done. 3 months. That's exactly when the dizziness had started. Right after my promotion. Right after I'd been chosen to lead the Morrison Industries campaign. The biggest opportunity of my career, and Alex had been systematically sabotaging me from the very beginning. No, she doesn't suspect anything, he said, and I heard him moving closer to where I lay. She thinks she's sick. Been to the doctor twice, convinced something's wrong with her health. It's actually pretty pathetic. Pathetic. The word hit me like a physical blow. This man who had held me while I cried about my failing health, who had cooked me special meals to help me feel better, who had suggested I take time off work because I seemed so unwell. He thought I was pathetic. I'll have the files copied within the hour, Alex said. Morrison Industries will never know what hit them. Their biggest campaign, handed right to your company before they can even present it. The call ended, and I heard Alex's footsteps approaching again. I felt him kneel beside me, his hand touching my forehead with fake tenderness. Sleep tight, baby, he whispered. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. As his footsteps retreated toward the home office, I finally allowed myself to breathe. But I couldn't move yet. I had to wait until I was sure he was distracted, until I could figure out how to escape this nightmare. Because now I knew the truth, and everything depended on what I did next. 3 months earlier, I had been on top of the world. The promotion to senior marketing director came with a corner office, a substantial raise, and the responsibility I'd been craving for years. When my boss, Mr. Harrison, called me into his office that Tuesday morning in June, I thought I was in trouble for something. Instead, he offered me the opportunity of a lifetime. "Mia, we're putting you in charge of the Morrison Industries campaign," he'd said, sliding a thick folder across his mahogany desk. "This could be worth $15 million to us if we land it. It's the biggest pitch we've ever attempted." I remember calling Alex immediately after the meeting, practically bouncing with excitement as I stood in the hallway outside Harrison's office. Alex had been between jobs for 2 months at that point, and I thought the news would lift his spirits. "That's amazing, babe," he'd said, but something in his voice seemed off, distant. "We should celebrate tonight. I'll cook your favorite dinner." That was the first night. The first night Alex made his special salmon with herb sauce, the meal that would become our routine for the next 3 months. The first night I felt dizzy after dinner, stumbling slightly as I helped clear the dishes. "You okay?" Alex had asked, steadying me with his hands on my shoulders. "Just tired," I'd replied. "It's been a crazy day." "You should get some rest. Big responsibilities ahead." Looking back now, I could see how carefully he'd planned everything, how he'd suggested I work from home more often to reduce stress, how he'd insisted on cooking dinner every single night, claiming he wanted to take care of me while I focused on the campaign. The Morrison Industries project consumed my days. I spent weeks researching their company culture, their target demographics, their competitors. I developed concepts that I knew were brilliant, strategies that could revolutionize how they approached their market. Every evening, I'd come home exhausted but exhilarated, eager to share my progress with Alex. He was always so interested, so supportive. "Tell me about the timeline," he'd say as he stirred sauce on the stove. "When do you present the final concept?" "What's your main angle going to be?" he'd ask while plating our food. "Have you figured out the budget breakdown yet?" he'd inquire as we sat down to eat. I thought he was being a loving, engaged partner. I thought he cared about my success because he cared about me. Every question felt like genuine interest, every suggestion like helpful input from someone who wanted to see me succeed. But then came the symptoms. At first, it was just the dizziness, a slight spinning sensation that would hit about 30 minutes after dinner. I blamed it on working too hard, on the stress of the new position. Alex would help me to the couch, bring me water, suggest I take it easy. "Maybe you should see a doctor," he'd say, his brow furrowed with concern. "This isn't normal, Mia." But the symptoms only got worse. By the second month, the dizziness was accompanied by a strange fog that would settle over my mind. I'd find myself struggling to remember conversations from earlier in the day. I'd sit at my computer staring at campaign concepts I'd worked on for hours, unable to recall my thought process. The worst part was how it affected my work. I'd walk into meetings feeling confident, only to find myself stumbling over presentations I'd practiced dozens of times. My colleagues started giving me concerned looks when I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence or forget important details we'd discussed just days before. "Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard," my assistant Jennifer had suggested after I'd completely blanked during a client call. "You've been working non-stop since the promotion." Alex echoed the same sentiment every night. "You need to slow down," he'd say as he served dinner. "Your health is more important than any campaign." But I couldn't slow down. Morrison Industries was depending on me. My entire career was riding on this project. So I pushed through the fog, the dizziness, the growing sense that something was fundamentally wrong with my body. Alex became increasingly attentive as my symptoms worsened. He'd insist on driving me to work on days when I felt particularly unsteady. He'd call to check on me throughout the day, asking if I was eating enough, if I was feeling dizzy, if I needed him to pick me up early. "I'm worried about you," he'd say, and his concern seemed so genuine. "Maybe you should take some time off. Let someone else handle the Morrison project." The suggestion made my stomach clench with anxiety. I can't do that, Alex. This is my shot. If I give up this project, they'll never trust me with something this big again. Your health is more important than your career, he'd insist, but I was too stubborn to listen. Now, lying on the kitchen floor with the truth burning in my chest, I realized how perfectly he'd played his role. The concerned husband, worried about his wife's mysterious illness. The supportive partner, encouraging her to rest while he took care of everything, including stealing everything I'd worked for. The appointment with Dr. Wong couldn't come soon enough. By the third week of August, my symptoms had become impossible to ignore. I was stumbling through presentations, forgetting client names mid-conversation, and showing up to meetings with incomplete notes that I could have sworn I'd finished the night before. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Patricia, I confessed, as I sat in her familiar office, surrounded by the same cheerful yellow walls and motivational posters I'd known since childhood. Dr. Wong had been our family doctor for over 15 years, and she was one of the few people I trusted completely. She leaned forward in her chair, her dark eyes studying my face with the intensity I remembered from when I was a kid pretending to be sick to skip school. Except this time, I desperately wanted her to find something wrong. "Tell me about these dizzy spells again," she said, pen poised over her notepad. "When do they typically occur?" "Always after dinner," I replied, rubbing my temples where a dull headache had been building all day. "It starts about 30 minutes after I eat, and then I just feel disconnected, like I'm watching my life through fog." "And this has been going on for how long?" "About 2 months now, maybe a little longer." I shifted uncomfortably in the plastic chair. "Patricia, I'm scared. Yesterday, I completely forgot a client meeting. A meeting I'd scheduled myself just 2 days earlier. My assistant had to remind me, and even then, I couldn't remember what we were supposed to discuss." Dr. Wong made several notes, her expression growing more concerned. "Have you changed anything in your diet recently? New medications, supplements?" "Nothing. Alex has been cooking more often since I got the promotion, but that's just because he's been unemployed and wants to help out. He makes really healthy meals, lots of fish and vegetables." "Alex is your husband?" "Yes, for 3 years now. He's been incredibly supportive through all this. He keeps suggesting I take time off work, but I can't. Not with the Morrison project." Dr. Wong nodded, continuing to write. "Let's run some tests. Blood work, vitamin levels, thyroid function. We'll also check for any neurological issues that might be causing the memory problems." The blood draw was routine, but as I sat in the waiting room afterward, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong, not just with my health, but with everything. The symptoms were too specific, too consistent. They followed a pattern that didn't make medical sense. "I want you to keep a detailed diary," Dr. Wong said when I returned to her office. "Write down everything you eat, when you eat it, and exactly when the symptoms start. Include your sleep patterns, stress levels, anything that might be relevant." "Do you think it's serious?" She hesitated, and that pause sent a chill down my spine. "I think we need more information. But Mia, I have to ask, have you noticed any other changes? In your relationships, your living situation, anything that might be causing stress?" "Just work stress. The campaign is huge and I've been putting in long hours. Alex has been amazing though. He takes care of everything at home so I can focus." "That's good," she said, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "How long has Alex been unemployed?" The question caught me off guard. "About 4 months now. Why?" "Just trying to get a complete picture. Sometimes major life changes can affect our health in unexpected ways." When I got home that evening, Alex was in the kitchen as usual, preparing dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, and normally it would have made my mouth water. Instead, my stomach clenched with anxiety. "How did the appointment go?" he asked, not looking up from the stove. "She's running some tests, blood work, that sort of thing." "Good. I'm sure she'll figure out what's wrong." He turned to face me, his expression perfectly concerned. "You look tired. Why don't you sit down?" Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. I watched him move around the kitchen with practiced ease, plating the salmon and vegetables with the same care he'd shown every night for months. Everything looked normal, domestic, loving. But Dr. Wong's questions echoed in my mind. The timing of my symptoms, Alex's unemployment, his sudden interest in cooking, his detailed questions about my work. "Alex," I said carefully, "what exactly have you been doing during the day while I'm at work?" He paused just for a second before smiling. "Job hunting, mostly. Networking. You know how it is." But I was starting to wonder if I knew anything at all. The symptom diary Dr. Wong had suggested became my obsession. For 2 weeks, I documented everything with the precision of a scientist conducting an experiment. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Every single dizzy spell, every memory lapse, every moment of confusion occurred exactly 30 to 45 minutes after eating Alex's cooking. On the 3 occasions when I'd grabbed lunch at work and skipped dinner at home, claiming I wasn't hungry, I felt completely normal. Sharp, focused, like my old self. The pattern was undeniable, but I couldn't bring myself to believe what it suggested. I started small, testing my theory in ways that wouldn't raise suspicion. On Tuesday night, when Alex served his signature herb-crusted chicken, I excused myself to the bathroom halfway through the meal. Instead of returning to the table, I scraped most of my remaining food into a tissue and flushed it down the toilet. That night, I felt fine. Better than fine, actually. I stayed up until midnight working on the Morrison presentation, my mind clearer than it had been in weeks. "You seem energetic tonight," Alex commented when he found me at my laptop at 11 p.m. "Just feeling better, I guess," I replied, not looking up from my screen. "Did you finish your dinner? I noticed you left some on your plate." My fingers froze over the keyboard. I was full. It was delicious, though. "You need to eat more, Mia. You've been losing weight." The concern in his voice sounded genuine, but something about the way he watched me made my skin crawl. By Thursday, I was certain. I'd managed to avoid eating most of my dinner again, claiming stomach upset, and spent the evening feeling completely normal. But Alex's behavior was becoming increasingly strange. He hovered while I ate, asking if I liked the seasoning, if the fish was cooked properly, if I wanted seconds. "You're not eating enough," he said Friday night, his tone sharper than usual. "You barely touched your salmon." "I'm just not very hungry lately," I lied, pushing food around my plate to make it look like I'd eaten more than I had. "This isn't healthy, Mia. You're already under too much stress with work. If you don't eat properly, you're going to make yourself sick." The irony of his words hit me like a physical blow. Make myself sick, as if I was the one causing my symptoms. That weekend, I decided to conduct the ultimate test. I would eat everything Alex prepared and document exactly what happened. If my suspicions were wrong, I'd know I was being paranoid. If they were right, Saturday dinner was Alex's famous seafood pasta, a dish he'd perfected over our years together. I ate every bite, complimenting the sauce, asking for the recipe like I had dozens of times before. Alex seemed pleased, more relaxed than he'd been all week. 37 minutes later, the familiar dizziness hit. But this time, I was ready for it. I'd hidden a small recording device in my pocket, and I documented everything. The spinning sensation, the way my thoughts became sluggish, the strange disconnection from my own body. "I think I need to lie down," I mumbled, my words already starting to slur. "Of course, baby. You've been working too hard." Alex helped me to the couch, his hands gentle and supportive. "Just rest. I'll clean up." As I lay there, fighting to stay conscious, I heard him moving around the house. Footsteps in the hallway, the sound of my home office door opening, the quiet hum of my laptop starting up. My laptop, the one with all my Morrison Industries files. Through the fog in my brain, pieces began clicking together. Alex's unemployment coinciding with my promotion, his sudden interest in cooking, his detailed questions about my work. The way my symptoms always left me unconscious for hours, giving him free access to my computer, my files, my ideas. But I needed proof. Real proof that would hold up if I was right about what was happening. Sunday night, I made my decision. I would pretend to eat dinner, hide the food, and fake being unconscious. It was dangerous. If Alex discovered what I was doing, I didn't know how he might react. But I had to know the truth. As I sat at the dinner table Monday evening watching Alex serve his carefully prepared meal, my heart pounded with terror and determination. Tonight, I would finally learn who my husband really was and what he'd been doing to me. Monday evening felt like preparing for battle. I spent the entire day at work rehearsing my plan, going over every detail until my hands stopped shaking. The Morrison Industries presentation was scheduled for Wednesday morning, less than 48 hours away. If Alex was really stealing my work, tonight would be his last chance to get the final files. I left the office early, claiming I felt unwell. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach churned with anxiety as I drove home, knowing that in a few hours I might discover that the man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years had been systematically destroying my life. "You're home early," Alex said when I walked through the front door. He was already in the kitchen, ingredients spread across the counter. "Feeling okay?" "Just tired. Thought I'd rest before dinner." I forced a smile, hoping it looked natural. "What are you making?" "Your favorite. Salmon with that herb sauce you love." He moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, and I watched him with new eyes. Every gesture, every movement seemed calculated now. I retreated to our bedroom, claiming I needed to change clothes. In reality, I needed to prepare. I slipped a small plastic bag into my pocket, something I could use to hide the food. I also grabbed my phone and set it to record audio, tucking it into my bra where Alex wouldn't notice it. The hardest part was acting normal during dinner preparation. Alex chatted about his day, asking about mine, playing the role of the supportive husband perfectly. He even opened a bottle of wine, pouring me a glass with a smile. "To your big presentation," he said, raising his glass. "I know you're going to knock them dead." The toast felt like a mockery. If my suspicions were correct, he was actively working to ensure my presentation would fail. When Alex placed the plate in front of me, the salmon looked perfect as always. Golden brown with a fragrant herb crust, accompanied by roasted vegetables that smelled incredible. For a moment, I almost doubted myself. This was Alex, the man who'd held me when I cried, who'd supported my dreams, who'd promised to love me forever. But then I remembered the pattern in my diary, the timing, the symptoms that only occurred after his cooking. "This looks amazing," I said, cutting into the fish. "You've really perfected this recipe." Alex beamed with pride. "I've had a lot of practice lately." I took small bites, chewing thoroughly and making appreciative sounds. But instead of swallowing, I discreetly transferred the food to the plastic bag in my pocket whenever Alex looked away. It was terrifying. If he caught me, I didn't know how I'd explain it. "You're eating slowly tonight," he observed. "Savoring it," I replied, taking a sip of wine to wash away the taste of the small amount I'd actually consumed. "I want to enjoy this before the craziness of tomorrow." After 20 minutes of careful deception, I'd managed to hide most of the meal. My pocket felt heavy with the evidence of Alex's cooking, and my heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "I think I'll clear the dishes," I said, standing up with my empty plate. "I'll help," Alex offered, but I waved him off. "You cooked. I'll clean. It's only fair." In the kitchen, I quickly disposed of the hidden food in the garbage disposal, running water to wash away any evidence. Then I returned to the dining room, where Alex was finishing his wine. Now came the hardest part. I had to wait for the time when I would normally start feeling dizzy, then fake the symptoms convincingly enough to fool the man who'd been watching me experience them for months. "I think I'll work on the presentation for a bit," I said, glancing at the clock. It was 7:45 p.m. By 8:30, I should be feeling the effects if there had been something in the food. "Don't overdo it," Alex said, You need your rest. I went to my office and pretended to work, but really I was watching the clock and listening for Alex's movements. At 8:25, I heard him loading the dishwasher. At 8:30, I took a deep breath and began my performance. I stumbled slightly as I walked back to the kitchen, gripping the doorframe for support. "Whoa," I said, my voice deliberately unsteady. "I feel really dizzy all of a sudden." Alex looked up from the sink, concern immediately flooding his features. "Again? Mia, this is getting worse." "I just need to sit down," I mumbled, allowing myself to sway slightly. But instead of sitting, I let my knees buckle and collapse to the kitchen floor, making sure to knock over the ceramic plate that had been drying on the counter. It shattered with a satisfying crash, adding drama to my performance. Then I lay perfectly still and waited to learn the truth. The phone call ended, and I heard Alex's footsteps moving toward the home office. This was my chance, maybe my only chance. But I had to be smart about it. One wrong move, one sound that seemed out of place, and Alex would know I'd been conscious the entire time. I waited until I heard the familiar sound of my laptop booting up, then slowly opened my eyes. The kitchen was dimly lit, and broken ceramic pieces surrounded me like evidence of my deception. My body ached from lying motionless on the hard floor, but adrenaline kept me focused. Moving as quietly as possible, I rolled onto my side and pulled my phone from my bra. The audio recording was still running. I had everything. Alex's confession, his conversation with whoever was paying him, proof that he'd been drugging me for months. But I needed more than just audio. I needed evidence that would hold up, evidence that would protect my company and destroy his plan. The sound of typing came from the office. Alex was already accessing my files, probably copying the final presentation materials right now. I had maybe 20 minutes before he finished and came back to check on me. I crawled toward the kitchen counter, staying low to avoid being seen through the doorway. My purse was on the counter where I'd left it, and inside was a small USB drive I used for backing up work files. If I could get to my laptop while Alex was distracted, I might be able to copy his communications, find evidence of who was paying him. But first, I needed help. Real help. I pulled up Dr. Wong's contact information and sent a text. "Emergency. Can't call. Alex has been drugging me. Need police. Send help to my address." I included my home address and hit send, praying she would see it quickly. Then I scrolled to Detective Thompson's number, a contact I'd gotten from a friend who'd dealt with corporate espionage at her company. I sent him a similar message, adding, "Corporate theft in progress. Have audio evidence." The typing from the office continued. I could hear Alex muttering to himself, probably frustrated with my file organization system. Good. Let him struggle. I crept toward the hallway, staying close to the wall. The office door was partially open, and I could see the glow of my laptop screen. Alex sat with his back to the door, a USB drive plugged into the side of my computer. On the desk beside him was his phone and what looked like a small vial of clear liquid. The drug. Physical evidence of what he'd been putting in my food. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wong. "On my way. Called police. Stay safe." Another buzz from Detective Thompson. "Units dispatched. Do not confront suspect. Stay hidden." Relief flooded through me, but I wasn't safe yet. I needed to get that vial, and I needed to document what Alex was doing. Carefully, I raised my phone and started recording video through the crack in the door. "Come on," Alex muttered, clicking rapidly. Where did she put the budget breakdown? He was stealing everything. Not just the presentation, but all my research, my strategies, months of work that could be worth millions to Morrison Industries competitors. I watched him copy file after file, his movements efficient and practiced. This wasn't his first time doing this. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "Payment confirmed. Bonus if you get the client contact list too." Alex's phone. Someone was texting him instructions in real time. I quickly screenshotted the message before it disappeared from his lock screen. "Perfect," Alex said, apparently finding what he was looking for. Morrison Industries won't know what hit them. The sound of sirens in the distance made my heart leap, but they also made Alex freeze. He stopped typing and tilted his head, listening. "What the hell?" he muttered, standing up from the desk. The sirens were getting closer. Alex moved toward the window, and I realized with horror that he would see the police cars approaching. I had seconds before he discovered I was gone from the kitchen floor. I scrambled back toward the kitchen as quietly as possible, but I wasn't fast enough. Alex's footsteps were already moving down the hallway. "Mia!" he called out. "Mia, where are you?" I dove behind the kitchen island just as he entered the room. Through the gap under the cabinets, I could see his feet moving around the broken ceramic, searching. "Mia!" His voice was sharper now, panicked. "Where the hell are you?" The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, and I heard car doors slamming. Alex ran back toward the office, probably to destroy evidence. This was my chance. I stood up and ran for the front door, unlocking it just as Detective Thompson reached the porch. "He's in the office," I gasped. "He has my laptop, and there's a vial of drugs on the desk." "Ma'am, step outside, please," Thompson said, motioning for his officers to enter. As I stood on my front lawn, watching police flood into my home, I finally felt safe enough to collapse. The nightmare was over, but the real reckoning was just beginning. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, evidence collection, and the slow, painful process of watching my life get dissected by strangers. Detective Thompson sat across from me at my kitchen table, now cleared of broken ceramic and transformed into a makeshift interview station. "We found everything," he said, sliding a clear evidence bag across the table. Inside was the small vial I'd seen on my desk, along with Alex's phone and the USB drive he'd been using. The substance in this vial is a mild sedative, probably something he could get easily without a prescription. Mixed into food, it would cause exactly the symptoms you described. I stared at the vial, this tiny container that had controlled my life for months. How long would it have taken to seriously hurt me? "You were lucky you figured it out when you did. Long-term use could have caused permanent cognitive damage, liver problems, even coma if he'd increased the dosage significantly." The thought made me shudder. Alex had been willing to destroy my health, my mind, my entire future for money. "What about the corporate theft?" I asked. Detective Thompson pulled out Alex's phone, now unlocked by their tech team. "We've traced the communications to Marcus Chen, a senior executive at Pinnacle Marketing, Morrison Industries' biggest competitor. They've been paying your husband $5,000 a month for inside information, with a $50,000 bonus promised if he could deliver your complete campaign strategy before the presentation." $50,000. That's what my marriage, my health, and my career had been worth to Alex. "The good news is we caught him in the act," Thompson continued. "He'd already transferred most of your files when we arrived, but our cybercrimes unit was able to trace everything. Pinnacle Marketing is facing serious corporate espionage charges, and their entire executive team is under investigation." Dr. Wong arrived just as the detective was finishing his explanation. She'd been the one to coordinate with the police, and seeing her familiar face in the chaos felt like finding solid ground in an earthquake. "How are you feeling?" she asked, immediately switching into doctor mode and checking my pulse. "Physically, better than I have in months. Emotionally," I trailed off, not sure how to put the devastation into words. "That's normal," she said gently. "What Alex did to you was a form of systematic abuse. It's going to take time to process everything." Through the window, I watched as Alex was led to a police car in handcuffs. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without the mask of the caring husband he'd worn for so long. When he saw me watching, he had the audacity to mouth, "I'm sorry," through the glass. Sorry. As if that could undo months of poisoning, manipulation, and betrayal. Detective Thompson closed his notebook. "We'll need you to come in tomorrow to sign your formal statement. But the evidence is overwhelming. Between the audio recording, the physical evidence, and the digital trail, Alex is looking at charges for domestic abuse, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. He'll likely serve significant prison time. After everyone left, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of my shattered life. My laptop had been returned, wiped clean of Alex's intrusion, and I stared at the Morrison Industries presentation that had started this whole nightmare. The presentation was scheduled for tomorrow morning, less than 12 hours away. I could have postponed it. After everything that had happened, Morrison Industries would have understood. But as I read through my work, my real work, untainted by Alex's theft, I realized something important. This campaign was brilliant. It was innovative, creative, and exactly what Morrison Industries needed. Alex had tried to steal it because it was valuable, because it was worth stealing. I wasn't going to let his betrayal diminish what I'd accomplished. I spent the night refining the presentation, adding security measures and updating strategies that Alex might have compromised. By morning, I had something even better than what he'd tried to steal. The Morrison Industries boardroom was packed when I arrived. Word had somehow leaked about the corporate espionage attempt, and the energy in the room was electric. Mr. Harrison introduced me with obvious pride, mentioning that I'd overcome significant challenges to be there. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, looking out at the faces of potential clients who had no idea what I'd been through to stand before them. "What I'm about to show you is more than just a marketing campaign. It's a vision for how Morrison Industries can not only reach new customers, but create lasting relationships that will define your brand for decades to come." The presentation was flawless. Every slide, every statistic, every creative concept landed exactly as I'd intended. When I finished, the room erupted in applause, and I saw several board members exchanging excited glances. "Ms. Rivera," the Morrison Industries CEO said, using my married name that I'd already decided to change back, "this is exactly what we've been looking for. When can we start?" 3 months later, the Morrison Industries campaign had exceeded every projection. Sales were up 40%, brand recognition had doubled, and I'd been promoted to Vice President of Strategic Marketing. Alex was serving a 5-year sentence for corporate espionage and domestic abuse, and Pinnacle Marketing had lost 3 major clients when the scandal broke. I'd also started speaking at conferences about corporate security and domestic abuse, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs I'd missed. The intersection of personal betrayal and professional sabotage was more common than people realized, and my experience had become a case study in how to protect both yourself and your company. Dr. Wong had connected me with a therapist who specialized in abuse recovery, and slowly I was learning to trust my instincts again. The dizziness was gone. My memory was sharp, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself. Standing in my new corner office, looking out at the city skyline, I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything. Alex had tried to steal my work, my health, and my future. But in the end, he'd only made me stronger. The Morrison Industries contract sat framed on my wall, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your story. I was Mia again, and I was exactly where I belonged. My heart hammered against my ribs.